It's Real GM Radio. Dave DuFour is here. He's the host of the Athletics NBA Daily. We're going to talk about what might have been the best game of the NBA season so far. We're going to look ahead to what teams need to make a move before the trade deadline, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of this Jimmy Butler situation. Let's jump in. Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're recording this. Dave DuFour is here. He hosts the wonderful NBA Daily podcast over at The Athletic. Dave, I want to start with Cavs Thunder from last night. Battle of the NBA's top records. Two teams that hadn't lost in a month prior to them meeting, but the Cavs ended the Thunder's 15-game win streak in a game that was maybe the most highly anticipated game of the season so far. And one, I don't know how you feel about this. I imagine I know how you feel about this. It lived up to the hype.
Dude, what a game, man. Number one, good to be here. I miss RealGM. I love RealGM. RealGM is my homepage because I'm back to websites. We're off social media, forget that.
Old school.
RealGM is the homepage. That's right.
Clicking wwws into the little bar on the top.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, that game was so much fun. I titled the episode that we put out this morning, Game of the Year. It had all the hype that we always talk about the NBA missing out on. The NFL, they get a week to build up these games, these marquee matchups. And we had a couple of days where we realized, hey, this is a collision course. And it just happened to work out. And this is why I love, there are times where things just happen the right way. Both of these teams being fresh, having a couple of days off, dumb scheduling luck, shouldn't have happened. This is where I think the basketball gods kind of are at play here. These two teams feel like they're the best two teams in basketball. I have the Cavs over the Celtics right now. I don't I have to think about this more as a race than just what's on paper. And to be able to build this up, and when we started talking about this game on Monday morning on the show, and then we were able to do an interview to talk about, hey, look, this is the best Cavs team maybe ever when it comes to record, and definitely the best LeBron Cavs team ever. I mean, this team is way better than the Mark Price, Brad Daugherty years. I mean, I was there for that. Not that I was, I was like a kid, but I remember those guys. I was never scared of them as a Bulls fan. This team is, I mean, there's an argument to be made that until if you only counted the first LeBron stat, this is the best team that the Cavs have ever had, including that team that made it to the finals because, LeBron was incredible. And then Oklahoma City, with all these expectations that they've lived up to, they're a great story. They haven't even been healthy this year. So, I try to think about it from a couple of different ways. The narrative stuff does matter because sports are built on those narratives. And it was a great narrative matchup coinciding with both teams having crazy win streaks. OKC having 15 games, which is how the Cavs started the season. I love how that rhymes a little bit. And then the Cavs being able to play spoiler. Here's a funny thing. If the Cavs don't lose between now and next week when they face the Thunder again, the Cavs will be going for win number 15 again.
Yeah. They have a chance to have two 15-game win streaks in one season. This is I think
sorry if I'm too excited about just all the machinations were it was really perfect.
It was a great game. And the point you made about them being 2 days rest for each team, I wrote about it in my preview. I was like, oh my God, usually these games, you look on the calendar and you're like, oh my God, it's Celtics Nuggets. This is going to be really, the Nuggets played last night. This is not going to be as good. Oh my God, it's, whatever other team. And you're just like, oh, the Timberwolves played last night. That stinks. This was a game where they were both ready to go. And yes, I know Oklahoma City was without Chet and without Alex Caruso, but these were teams that were mostly at full strength and going at each other. And my favorite part about this game too, is that they took it seriously. They understood the moment. For young teams, sometimes there has been a little bit of a movement in the NBA to be a little too cool for school sometimes and be like, oh, it's just another game. It's just another game on the calendar and whatever. I know you have to say that stuff. But when you saw these teams come out there and play, they were out there like it was a playoff game. And it meant nothing.
The crowd acted like it was a playoff game, Wes. The crowd felt like the weight of the game. The officiating to start out, they were letting them get into each other. Someone made a call. And again, man, it had weight. The players were fully bought in. This is why the NBA Cup is actually fun, because the players are buying in. it's I think it's everyone else that has to buy in. It's the older stars. They're the ones that would have been like, whatever,
Too cool
no
for
big deal.
school. Right.
Yeah, but
These guys are
this
not too cool for
generation,
school.
the generations that's about to take over, yeah, they're friends, but they're killers, man. I mean, imagine if Anthony Edwards had somehow been involved in this game, right? Like those sorts of guys. Shea is as much of a killer as
Anyway.
maybe any NBA player that we could name. And then Donovan Mitchell has been. It was great. I don't know. The shot making was nuts.
Well, yeah, the quality of the game, before we even get to that,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, both of these teams took it really seriously. Numerically, it didn't matter. Like both teams have more than a 5-game lead in their respective conference.
Yeah.
Tiebreakers at play. They play in different conferences. It didn't matter for any of that record stuff. It mattered for pride. And that's the part that when they take that seriously was so great. You mentioned the fact that all these players are friends now. And you hear like older players who don't play in the league anymore. All these guys are friends. They don't care. I would argue sometimes it makes them care even more.
Yeah.
Like, who care about beating a stranger, right? Like to me, like I always went harder on my brother than anybody else. If I was playing my cousin, my brother, one of my best friends, like it was personal, and I played way harder. Sports, video games, cards, it didn't matter.
I don't think it's as much of a I think it was a bad thing for a little while.
Yeah.
And but I'm also anti-player movement. So like I don't want super teams. I think that's not as much fun. Love the one you're with, right? Like bring the guys up that you've got. So I think that once we got away from the thing where it felt like, okay, all the buddies are getting together. And I know we get the Villanova thing, but like that one feels a little different, and maybe just because it's the college atmosphere.
Right.
And this isn't even an anti-AAU thing, although I could give you some anti-AAU stuff, but I don't think the cultural part of that is an issue at all. But I do think that the appearance, where it felt like, oh, so these guys, they just want to be with their friends or whatever, instead of beating their friends, which is like kind of like what you're saying. And I think now these younger guys, I think they do want to beat their friends. I think they get up for these games. I mean, and also it does feel like these two teams in particular feel like they have something to prove this season every night. And that kind of rules, because I mean, look, the Thunder, they didn't win the title last year, but they were the 1 seed. And you could see a scenario where they come into this season devaluing the regular season and saying, hey, we're going to be very experimental, which they are, but we're not going to be chasing wins. I mean, think about the Warriors, right? We're not going to chase wins because we think we're finals contenders as is. And, they could have come into the season and okay, Shea's going to be on this rest program and whatever. And they're not doing that. They're blowing the doors off of everybody. Their defense is the single most disruptive defense conceivable, maybe. I don't know. This has been a really fun season. And these two teams have just made it even more fun than it would be.
I want to talk a little bit more about the Cavs, because I had two thoughts over the last couple of days. Number one, I think if they were wearing Lakers jerseys, they would be the favorites in the NBA. Like they would be the betting favorite. They have an historically great offense. Their defense is 8th in net rating, at least according to Cleaning the Glass. And like you said, the shot making in that game last night was amazing. The defense was really good. It was just the shot making was better. It wasn't even like one of these barn burner games that we get to complain about. It was like, no, these two teams played really well.
Garland and Mitchell combined for 29 points.
Yep. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley were unreal in that game. I think Cleveland checks every single box that you'd want from a championship title contender, right? Like they've got the defense, they've got the offense, good coaching, playoff experience, the one-on-one play. When Donovan Mitchell wants to hit that gear, he can hit that gear. Like that guy can legitimately play at an MVP level on any given night. And yeah, you look up and down, and you're like, yeah, this team has all the things that would make them a title team. And I do think, based on just sort of the conversation around the more maybe general media, I think people who are locked in like you and I on the NBA every night understood what the Cavs were. But I do think that people are coming up to more of the more general NBA fan is coming to the realization that this team is for real and that this team could legitimately win the championship this year.
Yeah, I mean, I have them above Boston.
Right, I have number 1 in my power rankings. It was them or OKC, and I just gave it to the team that won last night.
I like it. I like it. Hey, you got to beat them, and I think OKC probably beats them next week. I just think it's one of those series. Although I do, this is where it gets so. I think it's going to get tricky for OKC. And on the show today, we talked a little bit about who has the easiest path to the finals between the Cavs and the Thunder. And okay, the Thunder are the best team in the West, but certain matchups are tricky for them. Cleveland, for instance, is a tricky matchup, right? Like the two bigs. Now, we're thinking a couple months from now, that's not going to be as much of an issue because they have Chet Holmgren, but that's theoretical as it is. Like, how does Chet and Hartenstein look together? Like, we can say it should work, but we don't know if it will work.
It took Jared Allen and Evan Mobley a couple of years to figure it out. And Mark Daigneault's a great coach, and Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren are great players, but it's not going to click right away.
Well, this is also Chet Holmgren's second season. Right. Hartenstein, can you name 5 centers that are having a better season? No. Yeah. I don't know. You can't bench him, right? Like, you can't do a thing where it eats into his minutes. You have to add Chet back around him. And I think it's a trickier problem than maybe any of us are going to give credit for. But the path situation for these two teams, I think, is fascinating because, I mean, if you're Cleveland, you have to play Boston.
Yep.
OKC could luck into some stuff because of the matchups. I mean, there's a world in which a play-in team in the West is in the finals, like in the conference finals again. Like, we see this happen all the time. Like, the Mavericks have not been healthy at all this year. Luka and Kyrie are going to be out for probably like another month. I mean, they could be a play-in team legitimately in the West and make a run. So I think that this is watching the game last night, like at the end of it, this is what starts running through my head. I start extrapolating. Okay, so I see the issues here for OKC and what happens. But the Cavaliers, to me, man, I think that they're going to make the finals. I think they're better than Boston. And Boston I can't disagree. I can't trust them for some reason. And I know that they can do it, but like, there's something off with them. The last month.
You can't just say they don't care about the regular season, right?
No,
there's too many issues here. Their defense has really slipped, and maybe more than anything, that's a symptom of the regular season. But they also have like legitimate injury. Like, Drew Holiday's hurt now, right? He's in and out of the lineup. Jaylen Brown is in and out of the lineup. Obviously, you've got Kristaps Porzingis there. Their center depth is not what even Al Horford looks way older this year. Yeah, I have real concerns about Boston on the defensive end because, look, they're still in the top 10 in defensive rating, but they were a juggernaut defensively last year. And if they're just a hair worse, that just changes the formula a little bit. It just changes the chemistry in the test tube, and who knows if the same thing comes out. But my other issue with them is they are 24th in the league in shots made in the restricted area. They're near the bottom of the league in free throw attempt rate. This is a one-note team. They're making as many threes as they did last year, but they have to take 7 more per game just to hit that mark because they're not even hitting them at the same percentage. This is a one-note team, and I just wonder some of these bad defensive habits and these bad habits with settling for the three-point shot, where this is not an anti-three-point shooting thing. It's not what I'm doing here, but they are way over-reliant on that three ball. And those bad habits I have concerns
in front of you?
I don't.
Do you have their shot quality? Because I would guess their shot quality is worse this year.
Oh, it would have to be.
Yeah, I mean, just teams are geared up to run them off the line from like at 30 feet even. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is part of, what the strategy is against them. And then when you're burnt, like when you're playing with fire the way that they are with the amount of threes, like the variance gets trickier and trickier.
Peyton Pritchard wasn't having this incredible 6-man of the year run right now, I think we would be looking at them as, oh, this team's in trouble, like way more than we think. And Peyton Pritchard's a really good player. I don't mean to like discount what he's doing, but who knows if that's going to continue in the playoffs, right? And so I just think Cleveland has so many more ways to beat you is sort of the point here. Mm-hmm. My other thought from that Cleveland Cavaliers game that I've been thinking about over the last couple of days, is this the best 2-center team that starts 2 centers we've had since the 2014 Spurs? The 2 big lineup. The only other thing I thought about was, does Giannis and Brook Lopez count?
I think Giannis and Brook.
Does that count? Because like Giannis is sort of like this other. He's got his own position. If that counts,
he has the ball in his hands,
right? That would be.
I think just because like he is a play initiator, like in your mind, and so you don't think about him as a big. But I think he's a traditional. I mean, he's a big, and honestly, like I think next year he's probably a 5, but he's a big. And this is the best duo for sure since those guys at their peak. I mean, you had a defensive player of the year next to a defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee. So
That'd be
But
the only way. If we didn't count them, it would have been since the Spurs, since
yeah,
Thiago
with
Splitter and Tim
Splitter
Duncan have
and
done it.
Duncan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is interesting to watch because I mean, look, man, I think the league has gone back
Mhm.
to two bigs, and this is why the Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert thing, like kind of worked. You need two bigs when the best players in the league are like Nikola Jokic, Giannis. You got Victor Wembanyama, who's probably like a top 5 player now. He might be the best player in the world, and we're just not ready to say that yet. But
Put a pin in
uh,
that because I do have that. I have that question for you later. We're gonna get to that.
I'm struggling with it right now. But I think you have to have, you know, at this point, if you don't have two bigs or the ability to go too big,
Yeah.
you're in trouble. And this is why OKC, when they get Chet back, there's this theory that everything just works and now they can do everything. So, but yeah, having those two guys, number one, the rim protection is insane. The rebounding is fantastic. But the way that Evan Mobley has been able to attack from the wing this year, and Jared Allen working the dunker spot off of that, that Giannis and Brook weren't doing that. Brook was
No.
spacing out 30 feet on the wing, and Giannis was just going to work. Now you've got big to big game, and that's a superpower. Like
They had
that's
like
not
11
something that,
combined assists in that
yeah,
OKC win. They've got high-low actions, assists to each other. Like they pass it
yeah,
to each other where you've got Garland and Mitchell spacing the corners or
yeah.
spacing from the wings. And you're like, what is going on here?
Allen's hands are so good,
I
right? Like
know.
Jared Allen can catch every pass.
Yeah.
He's such a great short roll passer. I don't know, man. They've just got a lot of guys who like to share the ball too, which
Mhm.
helps. Even Donovan Mitchell has been he's underrated this season.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to have the numbers to be in the MVP mix, but he has absolutely been like the MVP for them
Yep.
because he is sacrificed. He uses himself as a decoy. It's a little bit of that Steph Curry thing. When Steph got KD there and he had to take what quote unquote step back, he actually made everyone have an easier job. Like Clay and KD got so much off that. I think Donovan Mitchell is not given enough credit. People brought up, like, oh, he didn't shoot well last night. Dude, OKC threw everything at him.
Yep.
Everything. And he still got 11. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, like, that's something.
They
And he
threw
also
all of their Lou Dorts and Kaysen
everything.
Wallace's and Jalen
Yeah.
Williams's. They threw them all at him. But that's to your point, the value. They threw the kitchen sink at
Right.
Donovan Mitchell, and then you got Mobley and Jared Allen just tearing it up in the paint. And then there's going to be nights where Donovan Mitchell, and there have been nights obviously where Mitchell and
Yeah.
Garland are just scoring combining for 60 points, and you're like, okay, like who's going to stop this backcourt? Okay, then last night, who's going to stop this front court? And when they get into their rotation, they toggle between Mobley and Jared Allen. One of them is always on the court.
Yeah.
They get to it at the beginning of the half and the end of each half. They're both on the court. But in the middle of those portions, they're playing. It's not small ball. I guess it's smaller than what they start with. But like you got Niang over there at the 4. You've got Dean Wade who can slide down, and then all of a sudden you're entering like Sam Merrill and Max Strus into the game. Karis LeVert with some on-ball pop. Like it's just like whoa. Like as soon as they get into their first substitution pattern, you're like, this is just different. Now it's all different. Now there's more spacing and there's more on-ball creation, and you're constantly kind of on your heels as a defense when you have to play them. And that to me is versatility. Like that's real versatility. And I think we got into a pattern of being like, oh, these small ball teams are versatile. No, they were just small ball and they were really good at it. They weren't versatile. They were just really good at this thing. This is real versatility because they could play it both ways, especially when you got Mobley at the 5, because you have all the benefits of skill ball essentially with a guy who's 6'11". And so they check every single box.
And Strus
yes,
coming back just makes everything so much better for them as far as fit goes, because he gives you 3 and D. And that's what they needed there. They didn't need Karis LeVert in the starting lineup. Okoro's never been able to hit enough shots. Like they didn't need a lockdown defender because they've got the 2 bigs. Like they're able to play team defense in a way, and give credit to Garland and Mitchell for just not dying on every screen. And like they're funneling all the actions to the right places. So they're doing a good job. Strus hits those shots, man. It opens up the floor for everybody. And he does such a good job. I know you saw a lot of him when he was with the Heat. Last night, I was thinking about this. They get a scenario where it's kind of end of the quarter. Mitchell has the ball and they throw 2 to Mitchell. And immediately Strus just creates the space, and he just doesn't think about the line, man. That's the key. You get a guy out there on the wing who doesn't think about the 3-point line. This is where Brook Lopez is so powerful for Milwaukee. He'll stand 30 feet out and he'll take it. And so that means the defense is going to have to rotate over eventually. Now, they didn't get anything out of that one, but just watching his footwork, I was thinking, oh man, they have needed this guy all season, and they're the best team in basketball.
It's wild. One last, like when you talked about the path for OKC, the East has a really weird. They have a tough path. Like Cleveland and Boston, the Knicks are not going to. I would argue that the top of the East is probably better than the top of the West. But then the East also has that weird thing of like, are we going to get Philadelphia in the first round? Because that would be kind of a nightmare in terms of like they come out of the play-in tournament. We got to deal with Joel Embiid in the first round. It's going to be fascinating what ends up happening with these seeds.
And sometimes, I mean, the Bucks are not going to be easy. You know, Middleton's probably going to be healthy by the playoffs, hopefully.
Orlando or Indiana, one of these teams are going to pop in this second half.
How is Orlando the 4 seed?
Unreal.
It makes no sense.
They keep winning.
Yeah. I made the case for Jamal Mosley as coach of the year over
question.
Kenny Atkinson. The thing is, I think, look, Cleveland's got a really good shot at 70. And if you hit 70, I think that's automatic.
Everybody gets everything. Yeah,
basically.
That's fair. And Donovan Mitchell should be more in the MVP conversation. Chris Fedor for Cleveland.com did a great piece previewing the game, talking about how Donovan Mitchell has taken that step back and he had a meeting with Atkinson before the season. You know, the whole, and I never know how real this is, by the way. It's always reported. Like the salt and pepper shaker on the table thing. I want to believe it. Suspension of belief. I'll believe it.
Yeah.
But he did that whole thing. But Mitchell being like, we got to run through Evan Mobley. Like that's what we got to do. And it's incredible how you've seen everything just change. And Atkinson going from last year, it was Mitchell and Jarrett Allen together, and then Garland and Mobley paired together, and when they would stagger their lineups, to flipping it to Mitchell and Mobley being together. And that was Mitchell's idea, according to the story. And then obviously you put Garland with Jarrett Allen, which is just very much more of your traditional point guard, traditional center, vertical spacing, pick and roll type thing, which makes so much sense. And then Mobley and Donovan Mitchell are sort of more of like these like improvisational skill kind of players. And they've just been awesome together. And you got to give a lot of credit to Donovan Mitchell for that. Safer bet.
Willing screen setter, Donovan Mitchell.
Great call.
And I think that matters quite a bit when you've got a guy like Evan Mobley.
A little bit like what Tatum did last year too, kind of taking that step back to take that step forward. You got to love what you've seen from him.
Yeah.
Safer bet to make the finals, Cleveland or OKC?
Oh, see, this is exactly what we did. I mean, I think probably OKC.
Yeah.
Because like what you said, in the East, they are going to have to beat 2 of Milwaukee, New York, and Boston. And for the same reason I said OKC could have a tricky run where Dallas drops into the play-in or whatever. I think that OKC generally is a better matchup for most of the teams they're likely to run into. Denver is going to be an issue if they see them, but you know, that's a problem for everybody. Like anybody might lose to Jokic.
That's true. And I still think that there's a couple of teams that we're still waiting on. Minnesota. We're still
Minnesota is no. We're not waiting on Minnesota. I mean, unless we're waiting for Minnesota to make some kind of a move. I just think this is not it. Yeah, it's a gap year. The Randall thing is not working, and they are just. I don't feel like they're going to bite that bullet and make the lineup change that they need to make, and that's to move Naz Reid in there. I mean, the DiVincenzo move is a good one. I like it. It allows you to really space the floor. Anthony Edwards should not be your only source of 3-point volume. You know, like that's a big problem when the defenses are able to load up on expecting him to shoot. It's like he's not dunking this year. That's actually really bad for you. So I'm off Minnesota. I just don't trust them at all. You know, they don't have the elite defense to fall back on, and
that's the biggest thing.
Their offense has never really been that impressive. As impressive as Ant is one-on-one and in isolation, that's no way to win a championship. So, you know, I think that the West, again, it's Denver. I want to see what the Lakers do, and I'm not one of these guys that overrates the Lakers ever, but they've got a pretty decent team right now. The Dorian Finney-Smith move just makes so many things clear. If they can figure out a way to find a playmaker, which they don't grow on trees, I like them a little bit. Yeah, I don't see anyone like Houston and Memphis are not serious to me as far as contenders go,
I'm with you
unless
on
they make a
Houston. I like
Memphis would have to
Memphis.
make a move.
I'm
They're,
okay. I'm with you.
I like them
Okay.
in the regular season.
I like
Memphis is one of
Memphis.
these regular season teams. They could just chew up wins, but come playoff time, I don't think they've got the stuff you need to win those games.
They are they are a team that can ruin somebody's playoff run. I don't have them right now. I'm with you. They're a move away from being like I see that team in the NBA Finals, but they're a team that could screw you up. They can win a series and upset like a top seed in the series. Like
But they could
that's definitely in the
also
cards.
they could be a top 4 seed and lose in the first round.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, we're starting to hint at it. We're a little bit less than a month away from the trade deadline. Jimmy Butler is the big name out there. It seems like he's trying to make his way to Phoenix. Bradley Beal says he hasn't been approached about waiving his no trade clause. Dave, I made this point on Locked On Heat, but I want to talk to you about it. If I were another team, and the right team, not just any team, I would really be. I might be jumping at the chance to go get Bradley Beal as long as he came with a 2031 pick from Phoenix. Because that Beal contract, we all look at it as an albatross. That was 2 years ago. It's 2 years left. Still 100 million left on. Like it's 50 million for Bradley Beal is not good right now, but it comes off your books in a couple of years. It's not awful. He's still shooting 40% from three. And I look at a team like Detroit or San Antonio where you're still cheap. You haven't had to pay your biggest guys their biggest money yet. Take Beal on your team. Nice little veteran guy. Locker room favorite everywhere he's Washington and Phoenix. I think he can help those teams make a little bit of a playoff push here. And you eat it for 2 years, and then you get this golden lottery ticket of an asset in the 2031 Phoenix pick. As long as it's unprotected, I would be on the phone. I would be calling Phoenix and Miami. Be like, what do you want? Like, here it is. We'll take Beal.
Just pretend to be the Spurs and call that in.
Right.
That's a great deal for all the reasons that you just laid out. And then look on the basketball court. Bradley Beal is one of the best guards operating out of DHO and elbow actions that we've had in the last 10 years. He was doing tons of it when he was at the Wizards. He doesn't get a chance to do much of that where he's at, right? And now that they've split him off from Plumlee, he's doing less. I would guess. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
No, but it's true. I mean, he's not running it with Oso either. Like it's just,
But man, imagine if he was running that with Wemby.
Right.
You know, you could see where that would help develop Wemby as well. And, $50 million a year for the next 2 years, who cares, man? Like, cap space is not as valuable as it used to be. San Antonio's cap space actually doesn't matter for another 2 years until Wemby goes on to that next contract and players start wanting to come play with Wemby. So I'm with you, man. I hadn't even thought about the Spurs as one of these teams. I thought about Denver. Can Denver get in without giving up MPJ, though? Like, that's the problem. Like, Denver is impossible, right? But you could see where Beal and Jokic, it would work really, really well together. If you're
Denver, like you were talking about MPJ for Zach LaVine, and that even we're talking about what $10 million difference between LaVine and a little bit less than 10 million. So it's still hard to climb up to that Beal number. But if you could find a way to do, if it's MPJ, Najee, whatever, let's say you get this and you're also getting that first round pick as Denver. Like, you're not going to spend that pick in 2030. We're not going to use the pick in 2031, but that's another thing in a trade chip for a team that doesn't have any trade chips. I would also be looking at it if I were the Nuggets.
Here's the problem, though. What happens if you wind up feeling stuck with Bradley Beal next season and feeling stuck with Jamal Murray? Do you know what I mean? Like,
would you trade Jamal Murray for Bradley Beal?
Who's trading for Jamal Murray, man? For real?
That's true.
Is that contract a good contract?
No, I think everybody knew that right away. I mean, it's only good when you have him next to Jokic.
That's it. So, I think if you're Denver, you probably everything kind of gets reframed through that too. But I also like Detroit. I think he could work well with Cade. Again, it's another high level ball handler, a guy who can score. It's going to make life easier. And Detroit, they got a good shot at top 6, man. They got a good shot at making the playoffs with the defense. The way the defense has been playing lately, Cade is maybe all NBA, especially when you consider how many guys are out of the running. I would love that trade for Detroit. Wes, you're pretty good at these, man. Like, where else do you want to see him?
Well, here's my other thing. If you're Beal and you want to win, if you want to make the playoffs,
go to Detroit.
are a better position to make the playoffs
This is
than Phoenix
insane.
is right now.
Someone's going to clip this of us saying, if you want to go to the playoffs, go to Detroit.
Go to Detroit. Do I have the place for you? The Motor City. Look, they've got they got a Little Caesars in the arena. I don't know what else you want if you're Bradley Beal, but like it's
Hot
crazy.
and ready.
Literally, Detroit and San Antonio are in better position to make the playoffs than Phoenix is right now. So if you're Bradley Beal, why wouldn't you look at this? And for the record, I understand why he has not been approached by waiving the no trade clause, because apparently, like, the Suns front office is not going to approach him until they have something on the table.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is, why is this not on the table yet? If I were these other teams, I would be like, get me Beal. We can have him on the team. He helps us right now. And as long as, I guess that's the holdup, is Phoenix willing to part with that 2031 pick unprotected? And my point now is, you're pot committed. What else are you doing? Like, you either do this or you go the other way and just say, we're going to trade everybody. We're going to trade Beal, but we're also going to trade Durant. We're going to trade Devin Booker, and we're going to just completely start over from scratch. So
I don't think they have to trade Booker, but I do think that they're at the point. I don't like the Jimmy Butler trade for anyone, except for Miami getting off of Jimmy Butler. I don't like it for Phoenix. It does not work on paper or in my basketball brain. It doesn't work. And I like what they have now better than whatever they would have when they got Jimmy Butler. I don't like Nurkic is really bad. That's their biggest problem, is that they don't have a serviceable defensive big man. That is their biggest problem. Scoring's not an issue. Ball handling's not really an issue. They've got a huge defensive hole, and their guys are not able to solve that. Kevin Durant is the guy I would be trying to move if I were them, because I actually think they could get maximum value back for Durant. So there's a little bit of sunk cost happening for Phoenix. I mean, this is $409 million payroll, which is the second highest in sports. When I found that out, it blew my mind. So I try to repeat it as much as possible.
In all of sports?
Second highest in all of sports. Yes. Second, right behind the Yankees. It is the second highest in all of sports because of the taxes.
Right.
Absurd to be a play-in team, not even a play-in team right now, by the way. So smart money, right, says cut your losses. We're toast. We got to get out of this business. And maybe could you maybe get a first-round pick in next year's draft for Kevin Durant, included with maybe some young players? I don't know. But if Kevin Durant was available, you'd have a list of contenders trying to get him. Like, would Golden State be able to come up with a Kevin Durant trade right now? Yeah. Now, I don't know what they have to give up, but you would have a market for Kevin Durant that you don't have for Bradley Beal, and that you should not put Booker on the market, because that's your guy. If anything, if you were going to blow it up and start over, you need to start with them. Like, you can't just Devin Bookers don't grow on trees. Bradley Beals do, in my opinion. I think you can find a bunch of guys to fill that role, but Booker does not. Kevin Durant at this stage of his career, you shouldn't even be thinking like beyond this season. They should move him this summer no matter what. But I would definitely be trying to get maximum value for those guys right now.
That's a great call. I mean, you just got me thinking about like a goal. Him going back to Golden State would be like, what fake trade? It would be like Wiggins, and if you got Kevon Looney and Gary Payton back, I mean that's basically your defensive backbone right there, between Wiggins, Looney, and GP2. You got Looney and GP2 on expiring
Phoenix
salaries.
Winds up a better team if they're doing that, right?
Yeah, right. Because you still have Booker and Beal doing the scoring.
Yeah, I mean, you could theoretically still do the Jimmy Butler trade. I mean, the funniest thing about this is that it came out like that. It's obvious that Jimmy Butler just sees them as marks, right? Matt Ishbia is just apparently willing to just write a blank check to whoever comes through the door. So I don't know, man. I don't see this trade happening for Jimmy Butler. Whoever's leaking this info is doing a good job of making him look like an unattractive asset. It's pretty funny.
I have no idea what to make of the Jimmy Butler situation. And I was in the room when he basically burnt the last of the bridge that was remaining between him and the organization. That was wild. That entire experience was crazy. And, but it does seem at least like Phoenix is really motivated to get this done. Jimmy is really motivated to get to Phoenix because they're going to pay him. And I'm struggling to figure out how it happens, but also I think that where there's a will, there's a way, and we've been shown that in the NBA time after time. And I still think like if you made me bet that he ends up in Phoenix, but that's it. It would
Sure, me too.
it's just a feeling, right? Like it's exactly it, right?
It's funny how this league works, right?
Right.
Like, these guys can pretty much engineer what they want, and
Mhm.
it is funny how that always works out. But I think the more interesting thing is, where does Bradley Beal wind up? Because he's the most likely guy to get moved. You know, I just I don't know. Detroit or San Antonio should definitely be in on Bradley Beal. I think he's a much more intriguing addition to someone's team. It's a
Yeah.
funny thing to say, but I think Bradley Beal will contribute more to winning this season for his next team than Jimmy Butler will for his.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the two teams we're talking about is Miami, which he doesn't want to play for, and then
Right.
Phoenix, which seems sort of out of it, then you're probably right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about other trade deadline topics here. So we're gonna play a game. It's called Trade Consultant. You're gonna consult the following teams to whether or not they should buy, sell, or stay put between now and the trade deadline.
Okay.
First one, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, number one in the Western Conference, obviously very good. Sam Presti usually makes some kind of move before the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was like the salary type thing with Gordon Hayward, but buy, sell, or stay put for OKC.
I mean, I think probably stay put, because they've not been healthy for one single game this year, right? So you don't even know what the team that you put together looks like on the basketball court, and it's not like the guys that are out are small potatoes. It's Alex Caruso, it's Chet Holmgren. These are guys that are going to be key contributors, if not Chet Holmgren being a star player for them when he comes back. So I think you stay put, but it's Sam Presti, and I think you have to think about the title windows in the NBA and how they're more like hallways than they are windows, and the doors are often shutting very fast.
Right.
And so if you're Sam Presti and there's an opportunity to go out and, I don't know, De'Aaron Fox is available, for instance. You have all the assets, you have young players that you can sweeten, any deal with. I think you keep your the phone line is open, but you're probably not calling around for a lot of guys. But the De'Aaron Fox, like if Oklahoma City got De'Aaron Fox,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it would be
yeah,
crazy.
right. Like if it was De'Aaron Fox instead of Jalen Williams down the stretch,
So the Thunder are interesting because they have all those picks that they can just I made this comparison on Locked On Heat before, but like if Oklahoma City called you and offered 4 first-round picks for Tyler Hero,
right?
like you have to have you at least rent the conference room for a meeting, right? Like you at least get
They're the bank in Monopoly right now,
right?
Like
Yeah, it's crazy, and
yeah.
so they have a couple of like they've got the Isaiah Joe. If you put Isaiah Joe together with Kenrich Williams, you're getting about $20 million there in salary, plus whatever amount of first round picks that you want to move. That opens up a lot of doors for you that other teams don't really have. So for the Thunder, I have a bunch of like trade targets written down here. Like, why wouldn't they call the Clippers and ask about Norm Powell? Like,
Ooh.
he'd be interesting for them because to me they need like
Yeah.
one more on-ball creator who would be okay coming off the bench or being that fifth starter in smaller lineups or whatever. Call it Portland. What's up with Anthony Simons? Like just something like that. Because the Thunder last year led the league in three-point shooting percentage. I thought that was a little fluky. And in and then in the playoffs, they kind of went back down to about league average. And I was like, that's about right. Like slightly above league average. They don't have any bad three-point shooters necessarily, but they don't have any like three-point shooters who strike fear in you. And to me, that's the sort of thing that they're missing is that, okay, can't leave him alone on the three-point line. We can't, like, even without the ball, like we have to face guard this guy. We can't just rely on closing out hard. Like Simons would kind of be that. Norm Powell is shooting 40% for the last 3 years from three-point range. Like he would sort of be that too. So those are some of the options. Buy, sell, or stay put. Memphis Grizzlies.
You got to buy. You got to buy. Yep. They need a wing so bad. I feel like they could use maybe another ball handler off the bench. They could use some shooting. They're a good team, not a great team. They're good in the regular season. Ja Morant's ability to generate offense for them, 2 feet in the paint every single time he wants it. And then Jaren, I think, has been obviously an all-star, but he might be sniffing all NBA as well this season. Again, so many guys drop below the 65 game threshold. It's right. I don't know. There's like we're going to like the 30th best player in the league, might make all NBA, you know? But I think they need an upgrade on the wing, the same upgrade that they've needed for a long time. Again, those guys don't grow on trees. Like if they could get Cam Johnson, it would be perfect.
Right.
They would instantly feel like more of a title contender to me if they had a guy like that.
Love Jalen Wells, gonna be first team all rookie. Not sure I trust him in a playoff series
Be
against
better coming
OKC,
off the bench
Dallas, or
right
whatever.
now too.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
And so they were in on Dorian Finney-Smith. Obviously, he ends up going to the Lakers, but they were on the right track, something like that. They've also been sort of mentioned as a Jimmy Butler trade destination. That would be a really big swing. I think the fit works. I don't think they need to necessarily make that big of a swing either. They could do something like a Cam Johnson. Kyle Kuzma even could play a little bit of small forward for them and allows you to kind of go play Jaren Jackson at the 5 in those other lineups and have like Kuzma at the power forward spot, even though Brandon Clark kind of helps them with that. I don't know. There's options there.
I like Kuz on a good team.
Yeah,
Kuz on a good team is a different player. He wears normal size sweaters. And...
I do wonder how much, because he's so Insta famous now. Like, could he go back to being a winning player on a winning team, or have these bad habits just sort of sunk in Washington a little bit?
I don't know.
I don't know. It would be.
Do you know there is a funny thing though? There is a funny thing that when guys leave the Wizards and go to their next team, they get a bump. They really do. They play better. And I think there must be like a little bit of a morass that has like, I mean, you know, you're in DC and it can be gray there in the winter. Maybe that's what it is. You get out to some better weather. Let's send him to the Lakers could use him. Get Kuzma to LA.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been able to use Kuzma since they got rid of Kuzma.
Literally.
Indiana Pacers.
Ooh. I mean, I think you got to buy. You know, the big man situation for them is rough. They could also, I mean, again, just every team could use another ball handler and another shooter. That's the league that we kind of live in. I just don't know, you know, can they get like a guy who can play with Pascal and with Halliburton, but off the bench? I mean, they might also be a stay put team. I don't know. I think Matherin's been coming around defensively, especially. I like what Matherin's been doing the last few weeks. Like this has actually been a little bit under the radar with the Pacers because you don't think about their defense, but they've been much better. So they could be a stay put team. I mean, the thing is, I just don't have high expectations of them. And what I worry about with a team in their situation is doubling down on this kind of middle of the road thing that they're at, where they really, they probably need to get through to the summer before they make any kind of moves. I just, you know, I worry about them doing another like Siakam-like move like they did last year, which threw them way out of whack. Sorry, we got a emergency alert. Yeah, sorry. It's I don't know. Oh, I don't know if you there's really awful fires happening in LA, which I think everyone knows. I live in Long Beach, so I'm far away.
Okay,
the air quality is awful right now. Sorry to break news on here, but I may have gotten an evacuation order. I don't think it's for me though.
Oh, okay. Well,
not for me.
Check that.
I'm pretty sure it's not for me. Somebody would have called me by now.
Let me talk for a little bit, and you just check that you're not supposed to leave. No, so I think you're right about the Pacers. If there was something small out there that wouldn't cost me like an arm and a leg, I would do it. Add another wing, something like that. That would make sense if I were them. I wouldn't be going crazy. Like I thought about, would this be like a really fun Zach LaVine team? Like it kind of would, but that's doubling down on being mediocre. That would just be more of like a fun for me on League Pass type of thing. I also thought about like Lonzo Ball as sort of like Tyrese Halliburton's right-hand man. That would be interesting.
So I've been thinking about Lonzo Ball and where he winds up a lot. Well, number one, I think it's silly that the Bulls don't want to just get someone to make them better. Like like if they had gotten Dorian Finney-Smith, whoa. But since it seems like they're hell-bent on getting rid of all their fun players, Lonzo is very intriguing for a lot of teams. I mean, Memphis, like Lonzo would work in Memphis. I Lonzo works just about everywhere. He's one of my favorite players. I'm like been so pumped that he's been able to stay healthy. I don't hate it because he fits. He upgrades their defense. His passing there. Could you imagine Lonzo playing with Obi Toppin? Although, Obi's probably involved in whatever trade gets him there.
Right,
But
that's the thing.
just, yeah, I think a
Just
guy who
Lonzo and
could,
Halliburton just throwing no-look passes at each other. It would just be like, what's even happening?
yeah,
Nobody's looking at anybody.
he would create so much more playmaking space
Yeah.
for everybody because he's such a threat to throw those big passes. So, yeah, I like that. I like Lonzo there quite a bit. Yeah.
I'll give you one more here. The Spurs. Buy,
They should
sell, or
buy.
stay put. Yeah,
They should buy,
I'm with you.
but buy long term.
Mm.
Right. Although Bradley Beal, that to me is a long-term buy, right? Like he'd be there, he'd finish this season, he played next season. They'd probably move him for that last year of his deal, I would guess. But I would like for them to, like De'Aaron Fox, man. If you can get De'Aaron Fox right now and pair him with Wemby, all of a sudden you guys are maybe a playoff team this year. Next year, people are talking about you as definitely a playoff team, and you're going to be able to add even more talent because guys will want to come there. But yeah, they should be looking to buy, but they probably shouldn't feel like they have to.
I'm interested about how they go about building it around Victor Wembanyama, because with our big stars, we have a template in mind. Like, this is how you build around Jokic. This is how you build around LeBron, Luka. Like, these, we know, right?
Yeah.
With Wembanyama, it feels like everything's a possibility right now with him. It's like you could just build however you want. And I even going into the draft, a lot of people were like, well, they should be a Rob Dillingham team because he's this offensive like battery pack. But and then Wembanyama can cover him up for him defensively. And the Spurs literally went the opposite direction and said, we're going to get Stephon Castle. We're going to double down on length and defense and all and athleticism. And that's how we're going to do it. And I love that they did it that way. I did not love Dillingham for them because I prefer, like, hey, instead of just being good defensively, just be amazing defensively and just keep drafting these great long defensive guys. But they could still go in any direction. And so I think about them and how they want to build. And obviously if you could just get like long wings who can dribble and shoot, you do that.
Yeah.
But that's literally just like, okay, just surround them with all stars. Just,
yeah.
That's fine. But that's the part where I'm waiting, because you obviously want a point guard. Chris Paul's not going to be there forever. You want somebody that can get him the ball in good spots. But beyond that, they can kind of do anything.
I love Castle. I mean, he got Brook Lopez the other night. Yeah, and had to force it over too, right? I like a guy who's a dog like that. And I think offensively he's been a surprise to me. Just a little bit more competent than I expected for his rookie year. I just don't know. There's a point in which you say Wemby is a top 5 player, which I think he's a top 5 player right now.
Okay, so you hinted at this before.
Yeah,
I have him definitely in my top 10, and you have him in your top 5. I would imagine behind, in some order, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, Shea, and then you have Wemby at 5. Wow.
Yeah. And again, there are nights where I watch him and I feel like this guy is number 1. And like he's closer to 1 than he is to 6, if that makes sense, in my opinion. He just, part of it is physical, but the other part of it is the way his brain works. I mean, and I don't mean the chest thing. I'm not impressed by that. But the pump fake into a 1-footed running 3
right
the other night, that was a big deal to me.
That was wild.
The pump fake into whatever that 2-handed windmill thing was. So his brain is making these calculations in real time, but like a guard, and like actually like a guard, not in the way Jokic does it, where like Jokic is it's a totally different vibe. Wemby actually plays like a guard. And so I don't know. I just don't know how any of these guys are going to guard him once he is able to also operate in the post at will. And so I think that if you're the Spurs, you're thinking, all right, we're going to have the best player in the league for like the next 15 years. If everything works out right, who do we want to get for the first iteration of Wemby? Right. This young Wemby. And then who do we want to think about 5 years from now? Like, cause that's what they actually need to be doing. So, you look at like guys that are available, maybe like if De'Aaron Fox pushes the button, right? The Spurs try to go get that guy. And then you start thinking, okay, so who do you pair him with this summer? Because it's not about this year, it's about next, right? And so I think as long as they're looking to buy with this 4-year window in mind instead of just the next 2 years, I think it's going to be a good thing. But who's out there for
That's the
them?
thing. That's the thing. And we're gonna get a couple of years now where players are gonna start wanting to play with Victor Wembanyama, and we're not quite there yet. I think everybody's sort of looking at him like like through a museum glass. We're like, oh, this is kind of crazy. And then some of these stars are gonna start becoming free agents, and San Antonio might have some cap space, and you're like, wait, maybe this is an option for me.
If you're a really bad defensive guard,
Oh yeah,
please.
yeah, sign me
Yeah.
up. Well, that's the other
Damian
thing.
Lillard should be trying to get there.
Oh yeah. So there's a couple of stats that have come out with articles. Okay, so the Ringer, Michael Pina wrote a story on him about the passing and just how even the last thing we ever think about with Victor Wembanyama is generally his passing, because everything else just jumps off the page. He's a really good passer already at his position. This was from Fred Katz's story on Victor Wembanyama at The Athletic. San Antonio scores 1.37 points per possession immediately following a Wemby block that stays in bounds. That's crazy. Like 1.37 points per, that's 137 points per 100 possessions for people that are bad at moving decimal points. Like that is a wild stat. And so I think about, okay, do we want to play fast or do we want to play slow with Victor Wembanyama? Because if we're running off of his blocks, then I want wide receivers. I want tight ends. That's what I want on my team. And then Victor Wembanyama can get down the court in 2 steps, 2 or 3 steps.
And he's so powerful as the trail guy, because he can shoot that 30-footer and he can put it on the deck if you close out too hard. I mean, again, it's a huge problem. I mean, he doesn't have the Jokic hang up about shooting.
Right.
It doesn't bother him to take 13 threes. And Jokic, I think in his brain, he's like, this isn't the way you play basketball. Like we know he's such a hesitant shooter. So, when it comes to being a powerful player, like he's already the best defender in the league. The most powerful weapon that any team has on defense is Victor Wembanyama just being in the paint. He had 8 blocks in the game the other night, and it was sort of like ho-hum for us when we were talking about it. We were just like, yeah, he got another 8 blocks. It's another one,
And it hasn't even been 2 seasons, and we're already just putting him in sort of the Jokic zone where it's just like, oh, 40, 20, and 10. Like, who cares? Like, it's just like,
I don't know what else to do with him, to be honest with you. Like, I'm probably going to have people that are going to get upset with me this season as I evolve into where I think I'm going to wind up, which is he's the best player in the world. But I honestly, legitimately, I've seen so much basketball at every single level in places that you've never even heard of even. And I literally don't know what to do with this guy. It is like someone put a hack into NBA Live 95 and just made a Superman. It just doesn't make any sense. So as long as he keeps progressing the way he is, and I think we all agree, this guy has gotten better every game of his career. Every single game he's gotten better.
He downloads information and reacts, and you can literally just watch him get better. It is a video game. It's like watching
Spurs.
You can see the levels. Like you could see literally, oh, I'm on level 30 now. I'm level 40 now. You could literally just see it happening. I remember having a conversation with the guy who works him out, Tim Martin, and this was when Victor Wembanyama was in Paris, and I was working on a story about something else. I don't even remember, but I was like, oh, he's Victor Wembanyama's guy. So I was like, I got to ask you about Victor Wembanyama before we hang up. I'm like, is this guy is he worth all the hype? And he goes, dude, not even close. Like he's far and away worth the hype. And it's not even the fact that he's 7 foot, at 5, the fact that he could shoot and dribble and pass and all these things. His mindset, this dude is a killer. This is one of those guys who every summer is going to add something to his game, like LeBron. And every time he's on the court is going to approach it like, not only do I believe I'm the best player on the court, but I'm going to prove to you that I'm the best player on the court. And I was
as long as he sticks to basketball, that's a good thing. They keep telling us these stories about, oh, if you beat him in ping pong, he's going to go buy a ping pong table. I don't want that, man. I want you to be a basketball killer and then relax in your downtime.
Right.
Let's not pick up any new hobbies. I need to see
chess.
what
I'm good
this
with.
Guy.
Nice, relaxing game of chess.
Yeah, sure. I don't care about it, but I want to see, what does this guy look like if he's fully locked in for his entire career? I mean, he's going to reset the record book in a way that I think people will start to say, yeah, we're going to have to change the way we even look at these records.
Everything that's going on right now, too, from a basketball scheme thing. Now we're kind of entering this new world of 2 bigs and all these, like all of it, like was a react. Like we had that reaction to LeBron. We had the reaction to Steph in a very big way. I think in not of a big of a way, but a similar way where we had a reaction to Nikola Jokic.
Oh, I
in terms
think
of
a
how we
huge way when you think about the way some teams have been built. I mean,
sure.
Minnesota comes to mind right away, but
Yeah,
the
definitely.
Lakers are definitely like trying to be as anti-Jokic as they can be. I mean, I
Mhm.
think
For sure.
Nurkic being in Phoenix was all about Jokic. So
Um, we're gonna have that with Victor Wembanyama, and the biggest question with that is, okay, like against Steph, go small, switch everything. That's how we're gonna do it. And it's
yeah.
hard, but at least we know what it looks like. With Jokic, bigs, load up that side, make sure that you're ready to jump past it. Like we know it, hard to accomplish, but we know what it looks like. With Wembanyama, it's like find another guy who's 7'5". Like I don't,
So
I don't know what it
I got
is.
Taco Fall, come on down. You know,
Let's go.
Who
Taco Fall is
literally
2 years too early.
Bol might be the
Go
like
Knights.
Bol shows flashes anytime he gets in a basketball game, but it's so few and far between that you have to think he must be awful in practice.
Oh
You
my
know what I
god! I
mean?
remember Shaq during like a highlight package on TNT. It was Wembanyama's rookie year, and he goes, "I don't know why everybody is so hyped on Victor
Yeah,
Wembanyama. We
yeah.
already had it with Bol." And I was like, "Shaq, stop! Shaq,
Look, man,
stop!"
Bol does some stuff that's so good, but man, come on. Ugh,
It's crazy.
get
Dave
out of here.
DuFour, you do an amazing job. You cover the NBA every day, daily, the NBA daily podcast over at The Athletic. Dave, thanks for jumping on, buddy.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me.